shades, it helps see through the smoke, cause the wicked hide behind the cloak. And if you stay in the mist, you gon' be soaked. So listen up, cause this hair of the dog, what's real, what ain't? Is this the fog or smog? Cause there's a difference when you breathe it in. So don't let the corporate media take you for a spin. This that morning show, they put you in the know. So I hope that you ready, cause all we do is go, go, go. Yeah, come get your info, you gon' be like, whoa. Hair of the dog, we bout that, ayy. We in the zone, we out here, yeah. Spitting the facts.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Hair of the Dog. I am Andy Kennedy in the Great White North in the frozen tundra of Canada. While I am looking out my window and enjoying the lovely snow that is falling very quickly, it means I'm going to have to spend some quality time in my driveway again today. Woo! Carrie, how's the weather in your part of the United States?
I almost feel guilty now because it's beautiful. It's a little cool, which is all relative, but my high temperature today, you'd be running out in either the Speedo or the banana hammock. It is going to be like 60 degrees here today, so I'm thrilled.
Okay, all right, two things. Number one, that it's not quite suntanning weather, but it is, and it's overcast today, so you wouldn't get any good rays today. But number two, I don't have a Speedo or a banana hammock. I have a mankini.
Well, there you go. So we should make a DLF one, or in honor of Andy, we should do a Hair of the Dog one. Just put that on our store so everybody could see. It would be wonderful.
Today, when I let my dogs out to do their business in the yard, it's dandruff of Hair of the Dog.
Yeah, that's.
Oh, they look, and they're both princesses. They'll stand on the covered back deck and look out and say, "Dad, really?"
Do you not shovel a space for your dogs?
I do, but it's not really conducive to a good lawn if you're continually running your snowblower on the back lawn, right? So there's that to consider, because eventually this white stuff is going to disappear, and then I'm going to have to try to grow grass there again, right? So.
Well, I hate to say it, but if you were a good doggy dad like Ted Cruz, you would have.
Yeah, I can't believe you're going there. Really? On a Monday?
Welcome to Monday.
What?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so I just love that little picture of Ted Cruz's little tiny poodle looking out the door. And so apparently what happened was his security detail, the Cruz family security detail, was parked in a warm car on the driveway and tasked with taking care of the dog while they were in Cancun during the power outage and all the stuff that was going on in Texas. So yeah, poor little dog.
It makes me wonder if, while they're taking the dog out to do its business, if they have the little microphones and, okay, Fluffy's on the move.
Right. No, the dog's name was Snowflake. It's literally Snowflake.
Snowflake is on the. Really? This dog's name is
no,
Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz, the science denier who lives in Texas, who escapes the cold's dog's name is Snowflake.
Yes, you cannot make this shit up. It is absolutely true. So
that's great. Right. I'm in a good mood now.
See, I knew you would be. It's Monday. Welcome to Monday, everybody. So for those of you who are just tuning in, where have you been? Welcome. So we are live and interactive, obviously. If you post a comment in the chat, particularly on our Facebook page or on our Twitter account, we'll see it. So join that conversation, and we want to take you with us. We're going to go across the pond this morning because it is such a complete and utter shit show here. And I'm constantly amazed. I was having these conversations over the weekend about the adage of the frog in boiling water, and that is all of us. Over the last few decades, we have become, we're not even a third world country anymore. And we seem to be okay with it. not on a fundamental level, we all recognize there is a lot wrong with what's going on with policy and how local and state governments, and it was just all exacerbated by the storm of the century that went through Texas. It hit us in New Mexico, and we still have power and water, but Oklahoma and Texas don't. So what was the difference there? But on the face of all of this, during this pandemic, we have lost businesses, we have lost jobs, people are still being evicted. They are now taking our homeless encampments and clearing those. I'm not sure where these people are supposed to go. And we still are having arguments about some sort of basic income or COVID stimulus relief, and we haven't gotten it here. So I wanted to take a look at how other countries are doing it. And one of our allied countries, the United Kingdom, in particular Scotland, because Scotland is in a really unique place right now. So all my family came over from Ireland after attempted genocide. So I have a very strong personal push for Scotland's independence because of that. So what's going on? All of those conversations about COVID stimulus relief. And then we saw a photograph. Andy, you want to put up this photo real quick? This is the one that this really bothered a lot of people in the UK, in particular in Scotland. And what I noticed was the contrast was here in the US, we little crabs in the barrel fight each other. But when this picture was posted, and this is in Glasgow, there were like 200 people in negative-degree temperatures in the town square at a soup kitchen trying to get food. And it was like unanimous that the outcry was, this is not okay. And I saw people from different kind of political perspectives. Everybody was unified going, we are better than this. And in the US, the commentary would have been, well, they should pull themselves up by their bootstraps, they're freeloaders, all of these things to blame the people who are out there trying to get fed in negative temperatures. So it was a stark contrast for me personally to see how they handle it. So this morning, I wanted to bring on a very lovely guest who is from the central part of Scotland, close to Edinburgh, close to Glasgow, right on the midway between both of them. And this is Edward O'Neill. So Eddie, good morning. How are you? Eddie's still muted. Hold on. Unmute, Eddie.
Right, can you hear me now?
Yep, got it. Good morning, Eddie. How are you?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you.
I'm going to make
yeah. So
it's water, honestly. I'm going to make one quick change to what you said earlier there, Kerry.
Go
the
for
UK
it.
is not a country.
It is not. You're
It's not a
absolutely
country.
right.
It is a united agreement, if you like, that we never signed. But anyway, it's a united conglomerate of, depends what you call them, 3 or 4 countries. In that sense, the UK is not a country, Scotland is.
Okay, thank you for the correction and the distinction. So let's talk about COVID and the pandemic and the lockdown. What's been going on there? I mean, we don't have to
What's been going on here is, depressingly enough, exactly the same as has been going on with you. In that there are people who don't believe it exists at all. There are people that say that it's just a way for government people to let their buddies make money. Me personally, I have not come across anyone that I personally know that's had COVID. I've heard friends of friends of friends. But at the end of the day, there have been a lot of infections in the world, shall we say. And if my memory serves me well, this particular one with coronavirus is not the most populous, infection ever. there's been been about 5 or 10 in my lifetime that probably killed a lot more people. I think the difference with this one is it's killing your relatives and my relatives in America and the UK and the so-called civilized world. I use the word civilized advisedly.
Okay, that's an important distinction, because when we were watching this, I remember here, particularly in the US, we now have evidence that it was popping up early in like December, November, and we really took no action here in the US until, you're right, it started to affect us in the US at an alarming rate and just spread so fast. So when it came to, not in my backyard type of thinking, you're right. We don't, like Ebola is now resurfacing in Africa, and much of it here in the US. No coordinated response.
We never did. But in that sense, it reminds me of an old Scottish phrase, which is, "I'm all right, Jack, screw you."
We have something similar in the US. That is our way of life. Yes.
It is. And it's getting to the stage just now. As I said to Andy earlier, the famous Scottish phrase, I won't go into the intricate details of what it means, but we're all Jock Tamson's bairns. In that sense, we all came from the same place. Your mum and your dad, they had you. In that sense, if you see someone, a baby lying naked in front of you, are they rich? Are they poor? Do they vote Republican? Do they vote Democrat? Do they not vote? It doesn't make any difference. It's not who you are that counts. It's what people make of you. And at the end of the day, we are all influenced, shall we say, by people, rightly or wrongly, and they make us what we become, sadly.
So to that point, what has been the government's response there to help people get through this pandemic? Because you've been on lockdowns just as we have, and that affects, small business owners, people who are working. You've got a significant portion of the population who is now unemployed there. So what has been the response there?
Probably much the same as the response in your country, in that our government, the same as yours, haven't got a bloody clue what they're doing. And to an extent, and I'm not defending them, but to an extent you can't blame them, because they haven't a clue what's happening. Well, we're going to stop people doing various things. You're not allowed to go into a clothes shop and buy a pair of trousers, or pants as you would call them. You're not allowed to go into a clothes shop and buy a pair of pants, but you can go into a big supermarket who happens to have a clothing department and go and buy them in there. I don't know if you've got the same problem here, but we have not department stores as such, but discount stores, if you like, and you can go in there because they sell milk, therefore they're open, but you can't go into any other place because they don't. It comes down to what governments think are urgent, and then you get things like a classic example. Prince Philip, old Philip, is 99, and he went into hospital 4 or 5 days ago. Private hospital, of course, none of your National Health Service stuff. And his son, Prince Charles, went to visit him, and that's a 200-300 mile round trip. And I guess it's probably the same in your country, but if your mother goes into hospital, you're not allowed to go and visit her.
No, so you're right.
The rules just change depending on who you are.
Well,
now,
Andy, we talked about that. Go ahead.
Well, and I'm currently on lockdown, which now that the numbers are trending downward, the Conservative Ontario government is thinking of opening everything back up again because they're trending in a negative way, which, means that they will never go back up again.
Except they will.
And I'm locked in my home, right? I'm basically not allowed to leave my home unless it's for a medical appointment or to go out and provide, like, go to a grocery store and buy food for myself, whatever. And meanwhile, I look out my kitchen window to the road in front of my house, and there goes a bus packed with kids heading to school.
Yeah.
How does that make any sense?
Well, a classic example of that, Andy, is we currently live right next to a primary school. And that primary school has been like a desert for the last few months.
Mm-hmm.
It opened again today. I think it's for primary 1, 2, and 3. And you think, right, theoretically, you grown up adult guys, you know that you're not supposed to go and see your mates and do this and do that and do the next thing. Try telling that to a 6-year-old child you're not allowed to do this, that, and another. Now,
or even keep a mask on their face.
Yeah. I'm not saying I have the solution to it, because I don't. But then again, neither do governments. And at the end of the day, we're just going to have to, I think, live with this illness, infection, whatever you want to call it, until our bodies find a way around it. Other than that, what I can actually see happening, everyone uses alcohol wipes and masks, and they clean things 14 times before they touch it. And it will get to the ridiculous stage that our own immune systems will break down. So that after this pandemic is over, you'll go out and it'll be raining and we'll get contaminated by the acid in the rain, because our bodies are just so used to being protected. So I think the solution is somewhere in the middle, but okay.
I agree with that completely. And I've always been an advocate for it, because I've seen even friends in my own group that have been so protective of their children growing up, to the point of being what you would think of as a germaphobe, right? That you have to protect our kids at all times, right? It's those kids that don't go out and eat a handful of dirt when they're 4 or 5 that are the ones that are sickly their entire lives, because their immune systems weren't properly built up. Mm-hmm. Right. And I agree completely. We're seeing such an absence of regular flus right now, because the way that they usually transmit is what a lot of people are curtailing right now because of COVID. Well, how does that translate in the coming years when our bodies haven't built up those immunities?
Yeah.
Right.
So you're both kind of skirting around the issue here of vaccines, because that's how vaccines work. So what we're hearing from a U.S. perspective is that Eddie, you guys are dealing with a different mutated strain now that is more highly contagious. So what's the response been in your area towards
they basically said the 2 or 3 vaccines that they've got, they have said they are pretty good against the new strains that they've discovered. I love the technical description of pretty good.
That instills confidence. Now, there's also a report that was coming out here in the U.S., and I was not able to verify it, just so everyone knows, but there was a report that Bill Gates himself had stepped in to the vaccination process and actually asked one of the UK providers not to make it freely available, but to charge for it in the UK, because he did not have that kind of success here in the US. So as I understand it, it's one of the companies that he is personally invested in. Have you heard anything about that? Has there been any controversy about the vaccine being charged or how it's working?
There are people who pay for the vaccine, but that's more than likely that's people who are not necessarily in the queue for the vaccine just now. It's people who think, oh no, I want it and I want it now and I'll pay to have it. To suggest for one moment that the vaccine is free here is ludicrous. Of course it's not free. We pay for it through the National Health Service. We pay for it through income tax. Governments don't have any money of their own. They only have the money that we give them, or rather they take off us. So in that sense, the vaccine is not free. It's just paid for in a different way.
All right, Andy, he made a statement there. I want you to clarify, because the way that things work in the UK and the way they work here in the US and Canada is different. when it
Well,
will he threaten us?
actually, it isn't.
Okay, okay, go ahead.
Because as part of the agreement, the EU agreement, the the British were able to keep the pound, right, which is a sovereign currency. And so when we talk about how governments fund themselves, right, and we talk about taxpayer money, that's clearly that's the MMT lens says, that's a fallacy. The government creates the currency every time it spends, and there's no such thing. And I don't want this. I don't want this to devolve into an MMT discussion. But basically, I would rather use that lens to have a more of an understanding of why Scottish independence is possible and in a very real sense, right? So I don't want to get into that part.
Okay. Well, let's get into Scottish independence. Eddie, I remember, and I still have my little Scottish flag from 2015, the initial push for Scottish independence. And for the life of me, again, I have a biased Celtic view of it. My family had to bleed and die for independence, and all Scotland had to do was vote, and you didn't. So what is going on now with the push for Scottish independence?
Well, the reason why, one of the reasons why we didn't vote in favour as a majority, one of the reasons why we didn't vote in favour of independence at the last referendum was a duplicate of what had happened before through the old Scottish song, "We're bought and sold with English gold." Or in other words, and this has nothing to do with English, because let's be honest, Kerry, I've got an English sister-in-law and I've got a Chinese sister-in-law. So I can't, and I run a translations company, I deal with all countries. So I can't be described as racist. But the problem in that sense is the people who made the decisions in Scotland 300 odd years ago, there was a wee bit of money put in their pun, you'll just do this because we'll make it worth your while. Because if you look at what Scotland has, whether it be whiskey, oil, renewable energy, fish, financial services, etc., etc. I mean, guess who one of the biggest computer game writing countries is? Scotland.
Is it
Grand
really?
Grand Theft Auto, for example, right? Grand Theft Auto was written in Scotland.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Huh.
We do a lot of that kind of stuff. Who is the biggest? Right, I'll ask you two questions here. Which country is the biggest producer of whiskey in the world?
Oh, that's Scotland.
Okay. Which country is the biggest producer of gin in the world?
Gin? Really? No, I wouldn't have thought gin. I would have thought the US.
Do you know why?
Why?
For all the best reasons in the world, to make gin, you use exactly the same machinery and equipment and containers and systems as you do for making whiskey. The difference being you can't sell whiskey until it's at least 3-4 years old.
Right.
Gin, 2-3 weeks, sell it.
So one
And you'll
sustains the
find that
other.
the vast majority of distilleries in Scotland also make gin.
I did not know that. And I did the whiskey tour in Edinburgh. So,
Yeah.
They never mentioned gin.
In that sense, it's one of the things that gets quite depressing. When you look, for example, at people who voted no in the last referendum, they were lied to. There's a lot of names were put forward for all the lies that came out. But whether it's, whether Scotland would be £500, each person in Scotland would be £500 a year better off, or £500 a year worse off, I care not. I don't care. We should be making our own decisions. Simple as that. Now, I know from looking at bare facts, some of the stuff that I've sent, pictures that I've sent you on Facebook, Kerry, land up to something like 70% of all of the fish in the UK. There is more water, there is more fresh water, for example, in Loch Ness than there is in the whole of England and Wales put together. That's one loch. There is more fresh water there than in the rest of Great Britain. So, you know, people saying, oh, you're going to be short drinking water. Not this century. No. I mean, as we keep saying, Scotland is such a clean country. Look at it. It gets washed at least 4 times a day with the rain. But, I mean,
but wait
people
a second,
say, oh,
Eddie,
yeah.
You have seats in Parliament. So help me understand this. You have representation in Parliament. So why are you complaining?
Which Parliament are you talking about?
I'm not talking about Holyrood. I'm talking
Well,
about
you're talking about Westminster.
Westminster.
Right, not a problem. We have, I don't remember exactly how many it is now, but there were 59 MPs for the whole of Scotland at one stage, and we had 56 of them, okay? The problem, I'll tell you the exact figure. Give me 2 seconds. Come on, machine.
I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
All right.
Yeah, I already know they, so.
There we are.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right. We lost some of those 56 MPs at the last election, and people used to say, bloody hell, 56 out of 59 MPs were SNP. Yeah, the problem is there are 650 MPs in Westminster. So if every single member of the SNP stands up and says, yes, the vast majority of MPs who are English and sit for English constituents will say, no, shut up. And it doesn't make any difference what we say, we're in a minority.
Mm.
It's kind of like in the US with people that criticize the squad for not getting stuff done. Right? There's what, 6 of them now?
Yeah. I think we're up to 8 with Jamal Bowman.
The number is still very small, right? It's when they raise their voices to dictate policy, the echo is deafening.
Yeah, but Andy, let's be fair. In that regard, American politics and UK politics and your local town council politics are all exactly the same, in that there are official buildings where people speak and the cameras pick them up and they say great things. But the vast majority of the work is done in the car park by MPs, councillors, elected representatives talking to each other and say, look, let's do this. If you do that, then I'll do that. And, you know, we can come and go a wee bit. Most of the work's done in the car park, not in the House of Representatives. In that sense, it doesn't matter where yet. It was probably exactly the same in ancient Egypt and ancient Rome, except they didn't have cars.
Good point. Good point. So, Andy, you and I had talked a little bit about the economics of Scotland's independence, and Eddie alluded to it, right? So when it comes to the natural resources and other things that are commodities that help generate income for a nation, we know that Scotland is actually miles ahead of the UK. So it makes sense to me why, from a political perspective, you would want people to believe that Scottish independence is not a good thing, because if I'm a Tory sitting in Westminster, I'm terrified of losing the cash cow that is Scotland.
Exactly.
Yes.
Let me do what you're probably going to do later, Kerry. Let me read out what this is.
Okay.
Scotland has 8.3% of the UK population, okay? But we have 32% of the total land area. It was actually quite strange, because it used to be the case, they've tried to change it now, but it used to be the case when they used a map of the British Isles and the weather reports, Scotland looked very, very small. But actually, Scotland takes up 32% of the total land area. We have 61% of the total sea area. 9 fresh water, 65% of all natural gas production, 96.5% of crude oil production, 81% of untapped coal reserves. Who wants coal? 46% of the total forest area, 92% of all hydroelectric production. Do you know that Scotland in 2007, I think it was, produced enough electricity by renewable sources to power every single house in Scotland? And yet, if someone in Scotland wants to contribute electricity, excuse me, to the national, what they call the national grid, in Scotland, you'll actually be paying money to send money into the national grid, whereas down in Kensington, you are paid to contribute.
Wow.
It's just sort of, no, I don't think so. We have 40% of all wind, wave, and solar energy production, 30% of the total beef herd, 100% of the multi-billion-pound Scottish whisky industry. We've got a £17 billion construction industry, 13 billion food and drink, 7 billion financial services industry. It gets boring. But at the end of the day, you can read into that what you like, but one of the things that Scotland is not short of is stuff to sell. We are more than self-sufficient. And you know something? We won't necessarily always ask for money for it, because with a small s, we have always, I hope, been a very socialist country. And that if you need something and we've got it, right, we'll help you out. It's not a problem. Not because we are such nice people necessarily, but because it might be us next time. And we might need a bit of help.
You know, it was funny, a real quick story about being in Scotland. Now, I was there during the time when we had the British petroleum oil spill in our Gulf, in the Gulf of Mexico. And it was horrific, and the way it was handled was just horrible. People suffered. And we were sitting at a little pub, and right next to us, a bunch of BP workers came in, and they had their logos on. And, you know, just kind of nod and smile, whatever. And we continued on. And one of them heard our accent, and they all got really quiet and kind of looked down. And I noticed, I'm like, what's going on? And they said, we are so sorry for the Gulf. They took it personally and felt like they had to personally apologize for the way that their own company was handling it in my country. And that just blew my mind, that they would have some personal responsibility and feel guilt of it. And we ended up buying them all pints and whatever, but it's a completely different thing. But Andy, I really want to get to this point about MMT when it comes to Scotland, to reinforce what Eddie's saying.
MMT?
Oh, this is modern monetary theory when it comes to the power of the public purse and reinvesting in those things that matter, namely the people of your country. So we know that some pretty high level US MMT experts were helping with this financial plan for Scottish independence.
Yes. That's Warren Mosler was involved with the Scottish government to try to get a plan together for an independent Scotland's currency, fiat currency. The way that the reason why this makes so much sense is because of the list that Eddie just gave us about, they're a food sovereign nation, they're an energy sovereign nation, they're rich in natural resources, they have an amazing economy on all levels, right? And that's what allows a country to have a free floating exchange rate and power in their own fiat currency, right? So they're not necessarily constrained on how much money they can spend. They're constrained on the resources that are available to buy with that money. Well, there's there's really no reason why Scotland would ever have to worry about such a phenomenon. But the problem is, as Eddie was saying, is that Westminster doesn't want Scotland to leave because the UK or England takes a major hit if they go, right? So the propaganda machine is the biggest thing that they have to combat in trying to attain independence, because the neoliberal governments of Westminster don't want that to happen, right?
So Eddie, to that point, when we are looking at countering, you're countering this ginormous force of propaganda that owns the newspapers, TV, all of these sort of things. So here in the US, what we have tried to do as average folks is we go out and we march, we protest. But I just saw that 6 independence marches have been canceled because of COVID. Now we go out with Black Lives Matter and all of these sort of things, and we wear a mask, and we have the empirical evidence showing that those are not super spreader events. Why are they super spreader events in the UK then?
For exactly the same reason. How do people get to these events? Trains, cars, buses, etc. In other words, it's not so much the event itself that causes the problem, it's how people get to the event in the first place and where they go after the event. There's 100,000 people go to an event and they're all wearing masks. That's fine. They're all wearing PPE and you name it. They're all wearing masks and gloves and all that kind of stuff. And after the march, they all go to the pub. That's
that
where you
doesn't
get
work.
a problem. Or they go for a meal, or they go to their uncle's house. In that sense, that's the reason why they've been cancelled, because we are sensible. But in that regard, and I have heard of a number of people from a number of countries saying to Scotland, yeah, but this figure and that figure and the next figure, surely to God you realise that you would be better off being independent. And to an extent, if anyone in Scotland actually took half a moment to look, they would find out that is very true. But that doesn't necessarily require any new research. As I mentioned to you earlier, Kerry, a thing called the McCrone Report. The McCrone Report was brought out by, God help her name, Margaret Thatcher. She was even less popular than Donald Trump, put it that way. She asked for a report to be done in the late 70s. And she wanted to know, look, bottom line, what would happen if Scotland did become independent? And that report was done by Macron. And when that report, I use the word advisedly, it came out, it came under the Official Secrets Act. And it wasn't allowed to be printed and disseminated for 30 years. Now, I've had a copy of it for a long, long time, as you can probably imagine. But some of the things that are mentioned in the Macron Report, it's only about 18 pages long or something like that. But it actually suggests, for example, the guy's obviously got a sense of humour, but he's basically saying all these people who stick their money in Switzerland because, Swiss know what they're doing with money, they would all take their money out of Switzerland and put it into Scotland. And officially what he was saying was Scotland would have such a positive balance of payments figure, it would be embarrassing. It would put, I think they said it would make Saudi Arabia look like an impoverished nation. And
that's a tremendous statement.
Scotland's worst enemy are Scottish people. They need to wake up and smell the coffee, get off their backsides and do something. Not because I want to be rich or anything like that, but I think every country has not only a right, but a duty to make its own decisions. Simple as that.
We were talking with Dre on Friday, our last guest, and we were talking about Harriet Tubman and the performative nature of putting her on one of our bills. But one of the quotes, it's been attributed to Harriet Tubman as somebody who had this phenomenal life story of helping free slaves, saying that I would have freed more had they realized they were slaves.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the same thing that we're dealing with in the US, that you're dealing with in Scotland, that people don't realize that there is an alternative, or that how much we're being taken advantage of, right? Yeah. So like, even with the benefits that you guys are getting in stimulus, and you guys are fighting for an extra 20 pounds a week, we're not getting anything. And we're not also getting the information that the rest of the world is taking care of their people in some way, maybe not adequate, but something. We're getting nothing here.
When you say, hold on, when you say we're fighting for an extra 20 pounds a week, but you get nothing, what do you mean?
Literally, we have no stimulus whatsoever for people affected by COVID.
Well, but where does this money come from?
Well, from us, nowhere.
No, the money comes from you and me.
Well, it does. So
People have said, for example, oh, in Scotland you got an old age pension. Yeah, we get an old age pension because we pay national insurance along with our wages every week or every month. We don't get it for nothing. It's not a charity. This is basically a savings bank that we don't get a choice. Money is taken from our earnings every week, every month, and put into government. Simple as that.
Right. Well, with us, now the conversations we're having is actually cutting that insurance plan we call Social Security and those programs. So we're having those conversations about actually cutting it, not necessarily refunding that money or the savings account. But to Andy's point, all of the buying power that comes from the US dollar, from all of these things, it is us and the work that we produce and the people that actually help make the value of the currency that we can just create and give to Wall Street to the tune of what was a 14 trillion plus $1 trillion per day. Whereas we will not do that same investment so that we don't die, even though.
Well, and that's exactly right. Like, I mean, you don't have to even know about MMT or understand it, or that's not even where the conversation has to come from right now, right? That we have the one stimulus check that was made to Americans was 5% or whatever it was to the actual people, and the rest of it went to large corporations, just like it always does, right? And so the point is that you have these political choices that always are meant to go to capital, to large corporations, to the oligarchs in the society, but they're never really meant to help out the working class, or the, as Bernie would say, the 99%, right?
Yeah.
And that's the problem, that it's the way that capitalism and the neoliberalism has devolved society into winners and losers. And the only winners are the ones that have the privilege of wealth, that have the only voice in society, that control the propaganda machine that goes out to everyone else to convince you that if you are poor, it's because you made the wrong choices or you are lazy, right? And when you do your due diligence and you understand how things work, and that these are all man-made systems, right, to benefit a small amount of people, you come to this realization that poverty, homelessness, all of this stuff are political choices. And like any political choice, you just simply change it.
But in that sense, Andy, you've got exactly the same problem in America as everyone else has.
Mm-hmm.
In that, if you mention in America that you're left-wing, or God help us, communist, you would be slapped down. Except with a small s, what is socialism? You could actually argue, on the one hand, all men are created equal. But the problem we get is, yeah, but some men are more equal than others. Animal Farm,
Yes.
George Orwell, 1984. It's all the same. But the problem is, if there are 99 people that are thinking exactly the same as you and me, and one person who thinks, no, I've got all the money, I've got a lot of money, we're keeping things as they are. Why do things not change? Let me give you one small example that came up last week. You guys, with the help, believe it or not, from a small company in Dundee in Scotland, put your new rover thingy on Mars. Okay? Do you know how much it cost to do that?
Oh, trillions.
$2.9 billion.
There we go.
Okay? Now, with this COVID outbreak, the British government only to cover England because health is a devolved issue. Health is Scotland's baby, if you like. But how much did they put out a track and trace piece of software so that if you went into a cafe, you scanned the QR code, and if it turned out that one of your friends was found to be contaminated with COVID, you get a message on your phone, right? How much did that cost? $22.7 billion.
What?
Exactly. Why did it cost that much? Because it could. The Scottish government got their one done. I think it was for something like $16 or something like that. It's exactly the same thing. It's just there are so many people with their snouts in the trough. And the problem, whether it be America, Scotland, Europe, whatever, the problem is ours because we let them do it. And this will always be the same until we get off our arses and do something about it. Oh, is that revolution? Yes, it bloody is. And maybe it's about time we did it.
Hi, on that note, Dave, he's echoing your sentiments. He said, arguably, it's always the commoners against the aristocracies. And yeah, here it's the oligarchs. You have the same problem there with, it's not just the Tories, but we saw this during your election with the takedown of candidates who were speaking to the messages that you're talking about. We saw that people were accusing them of, what was it?
Jeremy Corbyn? Is
Yeah,
that what you're talking about how they made him appear to be
anti-Semitic.
Anti-Semitic, yes.
Yeah, I think that's the one they went with. And it's always these different excuses, and we always buy into it. We never question it. And then we end up in the exact same situation we're in now. So here in the US, you were told that you could push Biden to the left once he's elected. And now that he's elected, you try to push left. Now you're a Russian bot, or you're a Republican, or a Trump plant, or whatever else. So there's always that pushing down on relevant conversation. So I guess I'm a little sad to hear that it goes on the UK, but not surprised. So before we get out of here, because our time's almost up, what do you want the American people, and from Canadian perspective with Andy's folks, what do you want people to know about Scotland right now, and maybe how they can help out, or what they should be paying attention to?
I don't know if you can help really, because we have to help ourselves to begin with. The only way that I think people outside of Scotland can do is to say to people in Scotland, excuse me, why are you not running your own affairs? It's just not a very clever thing to do. Let's say you were running a business, right? And I walked in and I said, right, Kerry, tell you what, I don't know anything about your business, but I'll run it for you. And I'll do it. And I'll take all the income. I'll take all the income, yeah. And I will give you a reasonable amount to spend every month. How does that sound if I run it for you? And you would say, no, I'll run my own business. So why would you do anything different with your own country? I think people have to look at the absolute basics. I mean, you talk about a Scottish currency. What's wrong with the pound? We already own part of the pound anyway. The difference in trading between Scotland, England, and the rest of the world is not really going to change that much. Do you still want to buy our whiskey? Not a problem. Can we still buy your chips? Aye, not a problem. We'll buy them. There doesn't necessarily have to be the level of change that people think there has to be. Quite apart from the fact that the guy who invented the Bank of England was a Scotsman.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to be completely picky, the guy who opened the Bank of Scotland was English. So what difference does it make?
Right. And when you start to look at Scotland alone, their contributions, like my husband, engineering, Scotland, 100%. That's the forerunners and the I want to say the pinnacle of modern engineering science. But maybe I'm a little bit too much of a fan of Scotland.
We happen to be good at certain things at certain times in the history of this country. I mean, you're talking about engineering. We've hardly even got a steel industry these days because of a lot of reasons. Partly because we were just too lazy to get up and say, excuse me, no. And that's what some people in a lot of countries need to learn how to do again, is just stand up and say no.
And on that note, thank you so much, Eddie, for joining us this morning, your afternoon. I hope that you'll come back, and I hope that you will come back with some really good positive stories about the Scottish people actually learning to stand up and say no and declare their independence. So
I don't think I'll be around in 200 years' time.
No, don't say that now. Scotland now. But anyway, I do appreciate you taking time, and thank you for checking in with us. Andy, do you have any closing thoughts you want to leave people with on this bright and sunny Monday or snowy Monday?
I'm hopeful, really hopeful, and encouraged that it would be such a wonderful thing to see an independent Scotland, because it will demonstrate to other people and other countries in the world what the possibilities are for running your own nation, like Eddie was telling us, right? That people are afraid because they believe the continuous propaganda machine that, you can't govern yourself. You have to quietly, as Barack Obama said, eat your peas, and behave yourself. The things have to change. We have to start becoming more aware of our surroundings in this world. And an independent Scotland is a push in that direction. And I'm very hopeful. And I hope that the activism continues there. And I wish all the best of luck to Eddie and the Scottish people in trying to pursue that.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you so much to both of you. And thank you everyone who tuned in. And we will be back here bright and early on Wednesday. Hopefully we'll be out of a Ted Cruz news cycle and into stimulus checks are coming, and people can actually buy food and pay their rent and all of those sorts of things. So yeah, I hope to have better message for everybody here in the US. But until then, check in with us Wednesday, and then we will also be here on Friday. So thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, try to have a good day and just be kind to each other. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
We bout that, ayy. We in the zone. We out here, yeah. Speeding the facts, how it's supposed to be. Hair of the dog, we keep it neat G. Whoa.